one grandchild, then another, and finally her son Walter. Gangs murdered all three within 6 months.
Welcome to Boys in the Hood TV. Today we're tapping into the streets of LA, and we're gonna be talking about 3 teenage family members who were gunned down by LA gang members in a 6-month time period. Growing up in LA in the 1980s was a very dangerous time for most kids. Gangs controlled the majority of the streets in different sections across the city. It didn't matter if you were a gang member or you were just an innocent bystander. You could potentially be a victim, and sometimes just knowing a gang member can make you a target. And that's exactly what happened to these close-knit teenage boys. Meet Stacy Childress, his little brother Arman Easley, and their uncle Walter Dirks. These 3 boys all grew up together and were inseparable. Stacy was known as the most outgoing and always had a big smile on his face. His little brother Arman was very strong and very independent, and their uncle Dirk was very quiet and reserved. But eventually, Walter Dirks and his father Reginald Dirk would move them to Phoenix, Arizona to get away from the gang violence, and Stacy would go with them. But as time went on, Stacy and Walter would make their way back to LA, and sadly, their lives would meet a violent, tragic ending. Now at the age of 16 years old, Arman Easley had joined a local gang nearby in the area. In early November, Arman had marked out a 5 deuce Hoover graffiti on a nearby wall. Somehow, word got back to the Hoovers, and Arman began to receive death threats and that they wanted to kill him, according to the police. On November 12, 1987, Arman was standing on the corner of 43rd and Vermont when suddenly a car pulled up with 5 deuce Hoover members in it. A man by the name of Alexander Sanders leaned out the window and opened fire. Arman was struck multiple times in the chest and hit with a fatal shot to the head. 16-year-old Arman would die at the scene. Arman's family was devastated after hearing the news. At Arman's funeral, his uncle Walter and his brother Stacy will be his pallbearers, carrying his casket. That bond that these 3 teenagers once held had now been broken, but things would only get worse from here. After losing his little brother Arman, Stacy would go out and get a gun. But that following month in December, after the murder of his brother, Stacy would be arrested on gun possession charges. Just 3 months later, in February of 1988, Walter Dirks was with a friend who's from the Gangster Crips. They pulled into a nearby liquor store on South Normandy Avenue. Dirk would wait outside the car as his homie went inside the store. As Walter waited nearby the car, another vehicle slowly approached, parked, and 2 men got out of the car and stepped to Walter. Words were exchanged when suddenly one of the men opened fire, killing Walter. By the time paramedics arrived, Walter would be pronounced dead. At Walter's funeral, his nephew Stacy would once again be a pallbearer, but this time, it will be by himself. Just after losing his little brother 3 months ago, now his uncle is dead, and this absolutely broke him. After the funeral was over, Stacy would stay at the church for about 3 hours, staring at his uncle's casket. He would then tell his mother, "I'm all by myself now." At this point, authorities have no leads, so they set up a $10,000 reward for anybody who can come forward with information that would lead to the arrest. Sadly, no one was ever arrested for his murder. Now, just 2 months later, on Good Friday, April 1st, 1988, Stacy would go out with another uncle of his to go visit some friends who lived on West 46th Street, which was located deep in the Rollin 40s neighborhood. Stacy and the other group of friends will be standing outside, having a good time and talking, when gunfire could be heard nearby just a few blocks away. A group of 5 deuce Hoovers, which included 16-year-old Faydon Gibson, pulled up near Raymond and Vernon Avenue in a brown Cadillac. Gibson would exchange words with a member of the Rollin 40s Crip who stood by on the sidewalk, and Gibson would open fire. A 16-year-old boy would be shot as he collapsed on the ground. The 5 deuce Hoovers would flee the scene. The young kid who was shot would ultimately survive his injuries. But not long after this, at around 7 p.m., that same brown Cadillac would stay in the same area. Stacy was standing next to a 5-year-old named Deshaun Holly, who he was cracking jokes with, when suddenly that Cadillac with the 5 deuce Hoovers in it pulled up. Gibson and another member of Hoover would step out of the car and open fire on the crowd of people. 5-year-old Deshaun was hit 4 times. Stacy was also hit and 9 other people were also hit with gunfire. Immediately, the Hoovers, including Gangster, would hop back into the car and drive off. After the smoke cleared, 11 people in total were hit. By the time paramedics arrived, they described the scene as a river of blood. Everyone will be taken and transported to the nearby hospital. 5-year-old Deshaun Holly would survive his injuries, along with the 9 others who were shot. Sadly, Stacy Childress will be pronounced dead. After the shooting, friends of Stacy would run to his mother's home to tell her that Stacy had been shot and possibly dead. Peggy Graham, Stacy's mother, would once again suffer another tragic loss. First, her youngest son, Arman, then her brother Walter, and now her oldest and last son, Stacy. Police described this shooting as one of the worst shootings in LA history at the time, and it would become known as the Good Friday shooting. While preparing for Stacy's funeral, Peggy Graham would receive a phone call from the police that her youngest son's killer, Arman, was arrested. 20-year-old Alexander Sanders of 5 Deuce Hoovers was charged with his murder. Although Peggy was happy that a suspect was finally caught, it would not erase the pain that she had been suffering.
Earlier this month, a 19-year-old killed in a drive-by shooting was buried. He was Annie Dirks' grandson. In the past 5 months, she's buried 2 grandsons and her own teenage son.
It's a lot of hurt and it's just a lot of grief. I just started crying.
Today they are buried together in a hillside cemetery. Reverend Leo
Not
Beatty
long
delivered
after,
their eulogies.
16-year-old Phaeton Gibson of the 5 Deuce Hoover, he would be arrested for this murder. But not only was Gibson arrested for the murder of Stacy and attempted murder, he was also arrested for the murder of a 27-year-old parking lot attendee named Luol Almu, who was an Ethiopian refugee who was driving down the street on Vermont Avenue when Gibson tried to carjack him at a red light. Authorities stated that Gibson noticed that Luol was wearing a red jacket and assumed he was a member of the Bloods, and then opened fire, ultimately killing him. By 1991, Gibson was charged with 2 counts of murder and multiple counts of attempted murder. He was eventually sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences in prison. But first, because of his age, Gibson will serve out his time at Youth Authority and will be transferred to state prison once he turned 25.
He was the first one got killed November 13th. And Walter was the second one, February the 18th. Stacy was Good Friday, April the 1st. And Stacy and Ramona brothers. But I miss them so very much. We all do, everybody in this house misses them. It just seems unreal for them not to be around.
I want to thank everybody for tapping in, and I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and I'll see y'all next time.